Have you ever booted up one of your favorite Switch games, seen a menu option to play in VR, and wondered what the actual that meant?
Yes!
Me too. So I picked up a cheapy VR headset, bought every compatible game that looked halfway decent, and gave them all a shot. It did not take long to realize why nobody ever talks about this. Given the Switch's inherent design, rumors of VR support were plentiful from the second its concept was revealed. And as more and more people got their hands on the console, speculation only continued to heat up. But eventually, we got what we asked for, in the most Nintendo way possible. Cardboard. Instead of capitalizing on the rapidly expanding VR gaming market, Nintendo made their flagship VR hardware the fourth installment in the Nintendo Labo series. Yeah, they really just treated their jump to virtual reality the same as a cardboard piano. The Virtual Boy really must have scared them.
Get away from me!
If I'm being completely honest, I have no interest in the cardboard construction side of the Switch's VR at all. I've got too much useless gaming nonsense tucked in every corner of my room as it is. That would just be overkill. So instead, I turned to Amazon and bought the cheapest headset I could find made of not cardboard. And that's what I'll be testing everything with. That does mean I won't be able to play the Toy-Con 4 software exactly as it was intended, but I don't think I'm alone in saying I don't want to fold cardboard. I want to play VR games. That said, I'll still try the game out, but I understand that not everything's gonna work right. After the launch of Labo VR, Nintendo added compatibility to 4 first-party games, and never touched it again. A solid handful of third-party games are compatible as well, and I'm going to try a couple of those that I thought looked unique, but most of them are just that. No. But before we get too deep into each game and definitively figure out which one has the best VR functionality, let's talk about the hardware we're working with here. The display is obviously that of the handheld Nintendo Switch screen, with a resolution of 1280 by 720, which isn't very good to begin with. Now take that, divide it in two, put it right up to your face, and yeah, it's pretty rough to look at. But I mean, if you expected better, that's kinda your own fault. It's a 360p resolution per eye, and it looks blurry. But it's not that bad. And for most games, it's not a big issue so long as they run at a decent FPS. The headset I'm using was made by Oivo. I'm not sure if it's the best or anything, but I assume it's in line with other third-party headsets. Look at how much the dude in the description's enjoying it though. Whoa, nausea. Also, comfortable to wear is straight up a lie. Maybe I'm just spoiled with my Oculus Quest 2, but the goggles themselves sit so flat on your face, and the strap doesn't hold them up all that well. So it rests on your nose and just hurts. It's fine for like 10 minutes at a time, but then it needs to come off. Thankfully, most of these experiences are short and sweet. But even still, it's one of the last things I want to put on my face. Yes, 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 no, yes, yes. At least the console's in there pretty securely. Once you Velcro it in there, it's not going anywhere. And that's kinda important when you're turning your head a ton. This one also has 2 sliders to adjust how far apart the lenses are and how close they are to the Switch screen, which allow you to get the best view possible. That doesn't fix the blurry picture the console's giving, but still, it's doing the best it can. While it's by no means a quality vessel to explore a virtual world, it's a vessel nonetheless. So let's get into some of these games, starting with the introductory Labo Toy-Con 4. There's 3 modes: Make, Play, and Discover. Make walks you through the assembly process for each accessory, Discover shows you how all the contraptions work, which is neat, and Play has a bunch of different minigames for you to try out. Only a handful work without the cardboard though, and I use the word work very liberally. You have to hold the controllers where they'd rest in the peripheral, and for some, that's flat out impossible, since they use more complex rubber band and sticker technology. It sounds sarcastic, but that's actually how it works. Look. The camera and wind pedal are the only ones that kind of function. You can hold the right Joy-Con like a lens and turn it to zoom in and out, which lets you take pictures of fish and this thing. And you can pump the controller down as you would a pedal to make a frog jump. Beyond those, there's even smaller games in the VR Plaza, and a lot of them work without any additional hardware. Some of these can actually be pretty fun, but there's only enough there to keep you busy for like 10 minutes. Without the cardboard though, these are probably some of the best things you can screw around with in this game. Which doesn't say much, but it's entertaining for sure. I still wouldn't recommend it though. If you want the full Nintendo Labo experience, go buy the full sets. You probably knew that already, but don't think you're getting a deal by buying just the software and a standalone headset. You're not getting that same experience and it's not worth it. It's a decent tech demo for the hardware, but other games you probably already own can show you the same thing. Starting with the one that launched alongside the system, Zelda Breath of the Wild. And of all the VR compatible games, this one has the most content. Because, well, the entirety of the game is playable. Does that make it an exceptional VR experience though? No, not really. You don't play in first person and act like Link or anything. You just see the exact same game as before, but your head can now control the camera, and it's very disorienting. Your point of view isn't set behind Link either. Rather, it's in the same place as it is normally, so when you look up and down, the camera pans in or zooms out, which is really clunky in VR. And I'm no novice. I've been playing VR games for years now, and I've certainly played more immersive games than this, but I still felt motion sick relatively quickly. Now you can move the camera with the right stick, but that kinda defeats the whole purpose. If you play like that, it's just a blurrier and laggier version of the base game. Might as well just throw it up on your TV at that point. Nothing was added to differentiate this mode at all, making it novel for 5 minutes and nauseating for anything beyond that. Moving on to Super Mario Odyssey, they handled things a lot better and deliberately adapted some levels to work in VR. Now, that gives you way less to do, and it takes under 20 minutes to see everything, but I'd much prefer a smaller amount of content that actually somewhat works. They took 3 kingdoms from the game, locked your point of view in a set spot, and let you control Mario as usual to navigate a small section of the level. You wander around and search for 3 instruments to return to the proper band members, which mostly involves running through all these music notes. It's decent enough as a concept, but the execution is poor, since your locked position is so limited, and interpreting distances as Mario moves farther away is almost impossible. You can press R to zoom in, but that doesn't help a ton. Half the time you're just squinting and trying to make out what you gotta do, and it gets tiring very quickly. Thankfully, as I said before, it doesn't last long. When you beat all 3 stages, you unlock a 4th where you can watch Jump Up Superstar be performed right in front of your eyes, which is admittedly really cool, but there's nothing else you can do in the level. Overall, I'm happy to see them put a little effort into it, and for what it's worth, it runs really well, but it's just not all that engaging. If most of the action didn't take place miles away from you, it'd be a lot better. But even still, it beats out Breath of the Wild's offerings. Moving on to the one that intrigues me the most, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That option's been staring me down for years, and after finally booting it up, I'm sad to report it's the worst one yet.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Just like Mario Odyssey, it feels like you're so distant from the action, and this being a more fast-paced game makes it even harder to keep track of everything. Your viewpoint is at the center of the stage, and it's pretty narrow, so as the fight moves away, you've got to turn and look further to see what's happening. On a smaller stage, it's not that bad, but when they get longer or things move off stage, it's really difficult to make out where you are in comparison to the other fighter and the stage. However, the worst thing by far is the fact that you can't control the game with anything but attached Joy-Con controllers. This immediately kills any enjoyment you could get from the game, because it makes it even more uncomfortable to play. My arms got tired after holding the controllers up to my face for like 2 matches, and by then my eyes were strained from trying to focus on my character, so I called quits. For as bad as it is though, it still runs at a consistent FPS, and the fact that all characters in a good amount of stages are compatible is impressive. Again though, it's just not worth it. Play on your TV, you can see everything so much better and view way more at a time. Watching CPUs fight is probably the only highlight here, since you can take the whole scene in and not have to intently focus on one small thing, which is way easier on the eyes. But then it's not really a VR game anymore, is it? Bottom of the Donkey Kong barrel. And lastly we have Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, which, like Mario Odyssey, has a small selection of levels that have been optimized for VR, and it actually works a lot better here. That's partially thanks to the simplicity of the game itself. It's not crazy demanding or tough to keep up with. Levels play about the same as they would normally, but on top of controlling the camera with the right stick, you can turn your head to get the best possible angle, and it works way better than any of those other games. Zelda had turning and the right stick move the camera the exact same way, which makes you dizzy. Mario only lets you move it with your head, which is limiting, and this has both as options, but they act as separate entities, which actually makes it relatively pleasant to play. There's still only like 10 minutes of content, but it was the most seamless experience yet. And I really like what they did with the last stage. You jump into this cart and it transitions you to first person, where you can throw turnips and aim for stuff with your head. It definitely caught me by surprise, and if I wasn't so numb to VR roller coasters, it would have been a little thrilling. But unfortunately, Nintendo didn't build off that momentum and add support in other games. This is where it died. That's okay though, because we still have 2 more third-party games to try out, and I literally have no idea what to expect. First up is Reflex Unit 2, a top-down shooting game. I was really hopeful that it'd let you play in first person or something, but nah, you just get to watch from farther away. Huh? By default, the game puts you nice and close so you can see what's going on pretty well. You know, because that makes sense. Then VR mode pulls you way back so you can see this cool room better. Whoa, shit I can't interact with! It's stupid and defeats the whole purpose of it being VR. But that said, the entire game can be played as such, so there's a lot of content. But again, nothing about it is enhanced or different when in VR, so it's pointless. It's not unplayable, it's just an uninteresting game that's even harder to play, so I'm calling it the worst so far. And the final game I picked up is called Night of the Queen. It looks pretty low quality, but it seems ambitious for a VR Switch game, so for $5 I had to get it.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Why do I do this to myself? So my initial observations were right, but my assumptions were dead wrong. The blocky visuals were as expected, and that does make the console's limitations less apparent and allows it to run better, but everything else is rancid, and it all starts with movement. That's kinda important. Pressing up on the stick moves you forward, but it does so 1 inch at a time, block by block, which is so slow and jagged. And then turning makes it even worse. You can do it with your actual head, which is okay, but if you don't want to spin 360 degrees the entire time, you gotta use the stick. And that sharply jumps your perspective a slight angle in whatever direction you press. It's the clunkiest movement I've ever experienced, and in VR, I just can't handle it. But maybe you don't have to walk a ton, right?
Wrong!
It's an RPG, so you walk these long paths with absolutely nothing going on, until... Son of a... You can try fighting each one, but you'll die within like 3. And if you run, sometimes it doesn't let you escape, and you'll die pretty quickly that way too. Then it sends you all the way back to the castle. It's not worth it. I'm willing to admit when I made a bad purchase, and this is literally textbook. Worst VR Switch game, bar none. So, to recap, from worst to best, my VR Switch rankings are Night of the Queen, Reflex Unit 2, Smash Ultimate, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and Captain Toad. But yeah, overall, the Nintendo Switch and VR go together about as well as an electrical outlet and a fork. Great if you hate yourself, and bad for everything else. Now, there's an argument to be made that it's a good entry point to VR gaming, but I beg to differ. If this was my first experience gaming in VR, I'd probably never touch a headset again. If you want to start playing VR games, go get the Quest 2. It's a standalone headset that has a massive library of games. Also, it fits your head so nice and snug, and is better built for extended play. And for someone looking for an entry point to VR in general, go get one of those smartphone headsets. You'll have way more fun and get a better feel for what VR really is. There's a clear reason why nobody ever talks about this. And I'm not talking about Labo VR. I didn't really give that a fair enough shot, I'm sure it's fine, so I'll leave it alone. I'm referring to the Switch VR experience as a whole. I'm glad they stopped trying to make it work and stuck with what the console does well. That was way louder than I thought. Jeez. To learn more about a VR experience that's actually fun, click the video right there. And if you're just a Nintendo Switch fanatic, try the video there. Thanks for watching.